I can always count on you guys to let me know when something important happens in the world of YouTube, and this is no exception. I had so many comments yesterday when my video uploaded yesterday that Sam is back. Now, we love Salmonella here. I know he can be a little on the vulgar side, so for our folks who are worried about family-friendly content, this is probably not going to be it. Haven't watched it yet, just judging by his past stuff. It's very entertaining, very funny, but not always the cleanest. So just a heads up on that. The other thing is, this isn't really a history video. It's about animals' scientific names. So strictly speaking, it's really not the kind of content I would normally cover on the channel, but when Salmonella's been gone for a couple of years and he suddenly comes back and all of you guys let me know, I figure I probably at least need to take a look. So let's go ahead and dive into this. I'll put the link in the description. If you're not familiar with Salmonella, all of his stuff is going to be very similar in terms of style. It's entertaining, it's interesting, and it does teach some interesting facts about history in some of his videos, but it's a little different. But people seem to love it, so let's go ahead and dive in.
Hey kids, I just woke up from a nap I took in January of 2020, and boy are my arms tired. Let's see what I missed. Queen's dead, war in Ukraine, the Taliban's back. What is... Holy shit. They made a movie called Scoob.
Wait, they did?
Unprecedented global pandemic, Space Jam 2, some popular guy named Brandon. Yep, that just about covers it. Anyway, we all know about the scientific names of animals, but did you ever wonder what they actually mean? To find out, we must look to taxonomists. They're the guys responsible for the systems of nomenclature we use to classify organisms, and boy are they convoluted. First you got the big 8, domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species.
Now, I can't speak to other countries, and I'm curious to know, those of you who are in other countries outside the United States, is this stuff you learned about in science class? Because we definitely did. I mean, I remember all of this stuff, talking about domains and kingdoms and phylums and all that stuff, and talking about vertebrates versus invertebrates. You got mammals and birds and amphibians and reptiles, you know, it just... all of that stuff. So this is bringing back some memories.
I've seen plenty of mnemonic devices for this, but since the D just showed up in the 90s and is still disputed by some scientists, he's usually not included. So allow me to suggest a few. Dizzy kids puke cereal on fairground staff. Dumb kittens pushing cups over feeds growing spite.
I like that
Donkey Kong's fucking serendipitously. The way this whole thing works differs slightly depending on which kingdom you pick, so today we'll be sticking to the animal one, cause that one's the coolest and I'm in it. So what constitutes each taxon is pretty arbitrary. They basically just serve to act as another set of branches in the tree that taxonomists build. The one exception is species, which is generally defined as any group of animals that can have babies with each other that aren't sterile freaks. Mule, liger, zedonk, skunk ape, they can live fulfilling lives, but they're all shooting blanks.
So liger, for example, is when you breed a lion and a tiger together. So yeah, I mean, that's a good way of putting it, is that you can create something, but if it can't reproduce itself, then it doesn't really count.
So they don't count. On the other hand, in our innumerable trespasses against God, we can make things like chidandanes, which actually work. So dogs are dogs are dogs.
And what is it? Pugs? Like a lot of the dogs that we have today didn't exist like 100, 200 years ago. They're specifically bred. And I think it's pugs, for example, like the way that they bred them, like they have a really hard time breathing. It's almost like torture just to create such an animal.
Besides species, though, it's the Wild West in here. Plenty of times, 8 tiers isn't even enough for scientists, so they just stick new sub-levels in between. Legions, cohorts, tribes,
wait, those are
series,
things?
divisions.
So we're going with like Roman Empire military breakdowns for some of this stuff with legions and cohorts. This is all new. See, I graduated from high school in 1995, so anything that happened after that, I'm pretty much out of the game in terms of science, because I didn't really take much. I don't think I took any science classes in college, now that I think about it. Series, division. Now, I get the fact that as scientific research improves and as new discoveries are made, you have to reclassify some things until you create more. I get that, and I'm sure that there are, just because of the depths of the ocean and because of some of the places like the deep Amazon jungle and places, there are places that and species we haven't even discovered yet. In fact, I think we discover a lot every year, and I think there are like a lot of species that go extinct to our knowledge every year. But then there are some who kind of come back when we protect them. So bald eagle, I can remember as a kid, bald eagle was heavily protected animal. But now they're everywhere. Like, I never saw a bald eagle out in the wild when I was a child growing up. The other day I'm at my son's soccer game and there's a bald eagle flying around above the stadium, and we've got bald eagles everywhere now.
And if you want to keep going, you can throw all kinds of prefixes on any of these for even more layers. There's even subspecies, which the more pedantic of you may think to yourselves that creating names for subspecies at all kind of undermines the single somewhat agreed upon definition in the whole tree. To that, my friends taxonomists say, But while that's pretty complex, the actual names themselves are pretty easy to wrap your head around. Though taxonomists may hide behind their fancy Greek and Latin, the Vulgate is no substitute for wit. Now, I've scraped through the scientific names of a load of species, and most of them can be split into a few categories. The simplest ones are the animals that already have names in Greek or Latin. It's a lion, I'm calling it Leo. Done. Tiger, it's a tigris. Cat, it's a catus. Easy. Multi-word names can be translated the same way. For the golden eagle, we got Aquila chrysaetos. Gold eagle eagle. They decided to be a show off and do eagle in Greek and Latin. Essentially the same though.
That's awesome. They did eagle in Greek and Latin in the same name. Now, a lot of the names are really stupid though. Like, I mean, in English we have a fly, for example. I mean, really, we just named, like, of all of the creatures that use wings and can fly, we gave that stupid little insect the name fly. I mean, could not we have done a little better than that? But a lot of these names really just come down to what they are, like monopods and things like that.
Gold eagle eagle. They decided to be a show off and do eagle in Greek and Latin. Essentially the same though. But if a species is too specific or exotic for a one-to-one translation, that's when you gotta get a little creative. A lot of the time, inspiration comes from just giving the creature the old once-over and pointing out some cool-looking body part. Generally, the more distinct of an identifying feature it is, the more likely it'll get in the name. For example, homeboy took one look at this thing and said, "Yup, red triangle slug. I'm going on break." We called this thing a fucking unicorn, almost
A unicorn, one horn.
like that means one horn or something. Also, some guy deadass looked at an octopus and said, well, all they got is heads and feet. I'ma call them headfoot. And now biologists everywhere say cephalopod unironically. Matter of fact, if it's got feet, chances are that's part of its name somewhere. You got 4 feet, 6 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet, 2 feet, equal feet,
got a
both
song,
feet, double
I like
feet,
it.
stomach feet, lip feet, sucker feet, wing feet, big feet, slow feet, or feet, both feet, joint feet, no feet, 10,000.
But you can see why they use the Latin terms, right? Because they sound more interesting than just calling it a headfoot, right? Like, what a stupid name. Headfoot. But cephalopod. Oh, that sounds cool.
Feet, cow's feet, spade feet, cat feet, small feet. If it doesn't look that interesting, another thing to point out is where you found it. This could be a territory like American bear or Siamese crocodile, or just a habitat like woods macaque or toilet rat. But that's boring. We need
Wait, toilet rat?
Siamese crocodile, or just a habitat like woods macaque or toilet
Rattus latrinum. That's really its name? That's horrifying. I never heard of a toilet rat before. That's crazy.
rat. But that's boring. We need to look at the men behind the magic and what drives and motivates them. Now, if there's one thing that the scientific community loves, it's clout. And there's no better way to go down in history than plastering your own name on some shit you found. But not all fields have the same
That's true, and you even have scientists' names on some of the newly found elements in the periodic table. They get named after people, like Einsteinium, for example.
volume of things to scribble the old John Hancock over. On the one end, you got physicists just making up their own slightly different form of ionizing rate.
Röntgen, yeah, he was the guy who did a lot with X-rays. Oh yeah, that's
Radiation
awesome.
measurement. And even then, only the top
What?
dogs got away with it. Now, zoology. Any little goober flouncing through the underbrush can say, this one has 13 spots, but the one in the book's only got 11. I will call him Splinkus's ladybird. Alternatively, plenty of biologists have given shout-outs to their contemporaries, both other biologists and those across the academic gamut, from geologists to physicists to explorers and more. Naturally, Darwin's got a shitload, but even the background characters get immortalized one way or another. Who are Thomson, Grant, Summering, Erlanger, Speke, and Cuvier? I don't
Never heard of
know,
'em.
but they've all got gazelles, so they must be
Really?
pretty cool. Of course, other times, the name checks go to people who had fuck all to do with anything except for one taxonomist being a fan of theirs. Plenty of popular celebrities have species named after them, but since all the big cute stuff was found and branded a while ago, most of these idols are commemorated through repulsive little invertebrates. You got Scaptia, Beyonce.
What?
The only similarity I can gather
What?
here is Queen Bee. It looks like a bee.
Of all the things you could name after Beyonce, you go with that? That's awesome.
both not a real bee. There's Anomphilus jagarius, an
Mick
old
Jagger.
stone named after an old stone.
He picked like the worst
both not a real bee.
possible
There's
picture
Anomphilus
you
jagarius,
can find of Mick Jagger to show for this. That's fantastic.
Stone named after an old stone. In 2007, one Jason Bond, a professor of biology at UC Davis, dubbed this little dude Myrmecia Neil Youngie to honor his favorite musician, which caused my man Stephen Colbert to go on TV and profess his utter indignation at not having a spider named after himself. So naturally, the next year, Bond actually went on the Colbert Report to announce the naming of apostachus Stephen Colbert. So, if that gives any of you epic biologists out there any ideas, I wouldn't be opposed. Please, I would do anything. For the love of God, I'll even take a lichen. The world of politics is by no means immune to this phenomenon. Obama alone has fucking 9, as do a load of other presidents.
Barack Trema Obamaei, Kaloplaka Obame, Telegrama Obamarum. This goes to show you how many new things we keep finding. And I'm guessing with some of these, it's like he said earlier, it's some little tiny difference between them. It's probably just some natural kind of evolution of things. We talk a lot about evolution, and I don't get into all of that on History Channel, but a lot of that stuff happens pretty quickly. Just look at the human species over the last couple of centuries. We are slowly, completely eradicating natural blonde hair. The more we intermingle with each other, the more that darker hair becomes the dominant gene in more and more relationships. Blonde hair is kind of working its way out of the gene pool. Just because of all of that happening and the way that the world has kind of interacted. And so there's a lot of things that a couple hundred years from now are going to look very different than they do today.
Trump's got a moth with funny hair, Bush has a fungus beetle, Reagan's a wasp, Carter's got a darter, and so forth. Even Austria's most famous painter got the honor through this
Austria's most famous painter. Thaumas Hitleri. Wow.
Beetle. Mind you, it was 1933, so you can only blame the guy a tiny bit. Hitler actually wrote him a letter saying, "Oh, thank you, my little entomolomensch," and then went on to do, Hitler things. Fun fact, not only was this beetle stuck with just about the worst name you could have, it's also now facing extinction solely because of its value to Nazi memorabilia collectors. Guess old habits die hard. Fictional characters have their fair share of species under their belt. On the topic of evil beetles, this one's named after Darth Vader because he kinda looks like his helmet, I guess. This was actually named by the same guy who did the Bush one and belongs to the same genus. There's also this mite, genus Darth Vaderum, which is a lot more accurate and frightening. In 2012, a single bone from above the eye socket of a hitherto unidentified theropod dinosaur was being studied. And suddenly, under the light of the full moon, the guy working with the specimen had his neck covered with hair and his lips clench into a pog and his endocrine system fill with soy, and he said, "It's just like the eye of Sauron." And then he started chewing on Funko Pops and sweating cream of meme and snorting G Fuel and shitting D20s everywhere until the prostate stimulation made him the dinos.
D20s being a type of dice that are used for people who do role-playing games and stuff.
Genus is now Sauroniops, from Eye of Sauron. This spider was named after Godric Gryffindor because it looks like the Sorting Hat. SpongeBob has
You will be in Gryffindor! Oh my gosh. And this one's SpongeBob? Come on.
Not a sponge, but a fungus. The legendary birds from Pokemon each have their own, you guessed it, beetle, and the list goes on. Scientists are nerds. Who knew? Anyway, while this all seems kind of chaotic, there is some method to the madness. One rule is the principle of priority. This states that once somebody publishes their chosen name for a species for the first time, that's the name, and other taxonomists typically can't change it. This has led to plenty of misnomers coined by whoever got their foot in the door first, particularly in the case of the guys doing this stuff before we had the luxury of genetic analysis. Here's one. Red panda? Nah. Shining cat, coined in 1825. To be fair, they're actually about as close to cats as they are to actual pandas, so whatever. Here's two. Capsicum chinense. Eaten there? Sure. Native? Only off by around half a globe, where literally all hot peppers came from. This principle holds true even if someone thinks they found a new species, only to later discover that it was already named. For example, in 1824, one John Edward Gray documented the plains zebra, calling it Equus burchellii, or Burchell's horse, named after a renowned naturalist of the day. Little did he know, back in 1785, some other douche classified this character as the Quagga. The last Quagga died in a Dutch prison in 1883. So, why do we care? Well, in the 2000s, scientists decided to scrape some gunk off a dry quagga pelt and study its DNA. And from that they realized, wait a minute, apparently this guy and zebras could have, made a little plaid in the hay together. So technically they're one species. And today they're both called quagga. Sounds kinda asinine, but then again so does asinus, and that worked out fine. Just to maintain the distinction, the extinct subspecies was renamed quagga quagga, so you know it's the real quagga. This double naming convention has been done with a lot of subspecies, in fact. Wild horse, spotted panther, or my favorite, gorilla. Just like, yeah, it's the gorillest gorilla that ever gorilled. Fuck you want from me. A closely related rule also states that the names of all taxa have to be unique. So if two people coincidentally name any taxon the same thing, the older one gets to stay and the new one gets the boot. Like if you saw a genus called echidna, you'd think it was, an echidna, right? Well, no, that'd make too much sense. For a while it was true, from 1797 to 1811. Then it was pointed out that someone else already called a genus of moray eels echidna back in 1788. So the real echidna had to be changed to Tachyglossus, or quick tongue. Then a decade later, a dude did the same thing for a genus of vipers. Another 22 years passed, people discovered the same thing, and they were renamed to Bitis, cause they bit us. That one at least made a bit of sense, given that the original echidna from Greek mythology was half lady, half snake, but who cares at this point. Anyway, I've just barely scraped the surface of all the goofy names out there, so feel free to post more down below. That's all I've got for now. Till next time, I'm Salmonella, and I'll see ya in 2025.
I'll see ya in 2025. Well, I'm glad that Salmonella is back. I know a lot of people love his videos and are very glad to see him re-emerge. So whatever was going on for him that he chose to take a break, I say good for him, and good for him for being back. Let me know your thoughts. Use the comment section below. If there's other videos of his you would like me to do, hopefully a little more related to history, I will try to do that. And if you have other suggestions, please let me know. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.